She called the fire department and pointed straight at me, shouting, "He set his own boat on fire for attention." But I stood there, staring at the flames tearing through the only boat I had, the boat my father left me. The neighbors gathered around whispering, some recording on their phones, but nobody missed the smirk on Karen's face as she leaned against her HOA clipboard like she'd just won a prize. She wanted me humiliated, broken out of this community. The cops showed up, and before I could even speak, she stepped forward, flashing some fake HOA authority badge and saying, "He's dangerous. He doesn't belong here." One of the officers looked at me, uncertain, while the other scribbled notes, and I could feel the trap she was trying to set. I stayed quiet, calm, because I wasn't just a random homeowner. What Karen didn't know was that I had cameras hidden everywhere, even inside the dock posts. And those cameras had captured exactly who set that fire. And it wasn't me. The next morning, Karen strutted down my driveway like she owned the place, waving a stack of HOA papers. "Your property is a hazard," she barked, slapping the notice on my front door. "Until further notice, you're suspended from using the dock, and we're considering foreclosure." My blood boiled, but I didn't rip the paper down. I just smiled because I had already pulled the footage from my cameras and the video was crystal clear. Karen's son sneaking around at night, pouring gasoline, striking the match. Still, I didn't rush. I knew Karen wanted me angry, reckless, easy to frame. Instead, I went quiet, kept my head down, and drove into town like nothing happened. She thought I was defeated, but while she was bragging to her friends about teaching me a lesson, I was sitting in a bank office, sliding the evidence across the desk to an old friend, the same friend who just happened to oversee financial crimes for the county. Karen had no idea the storm that was about to hit her. That evening, Karen threw a little HOA meeting on the lawn across from my house. She spoke loud enough so I could hear every word. "This man doesn't respect the rules. He's a liability to all of us," she shouted, holding up my burned boat pictures like trophies. Neighbors clapped nervously, some out of fear, some out of ignorance. But right in the middle of her rant, a county SUV rolled up, and out stepped my friend from the bank. Karen's face froze, but she quickly recovered, smiling sweetly. "Oh, officer, perfect timing. You need to arrest him for—" Before she could finish, he cut her off. "Karen, we need to talk about your accounts." The crowd went silent. She blinked, stammering, My accounts? What does that have to do with this?" He pulled out a file, thick with documents. "Fraudulent transfers. HOA funds disappearing into your personal spending. Luxury trips, shopping sprees, all traced back to you." Gasps erupted around her. Karen's fake authority melted away in seconds, but instead of backing down, she doubled down, screaming, "This is a setup. He's behind this," and pointed straight at me again. I just crossed my arms, waiting, because the real twist hadn't even landed yet. Karen lunged forward, snatching the file from his hands, ripping pages, shrieking like a cornered animal. "These are lies. He hacked my accounts," she screamed. But the neighbors were already pulling out their phones, recording everything. My friend didn't even flinch. He calmly reached into his briefcase and held up a thumb drive. "Funny thing, Karen. This isn't from him. This is from your bank. Direct trace, signed off by federal auditors." Her face drained of color. She staggered back, searching for words, then hissed, "You don't know who you're messing with." That's when I finally spoke, my voice steady. "No, Karen, you don't know who you've been messing with." Every head turned toward me. I walked closer, slow, deliberate. "You torched my boat, framed me, tried to take my land. But while you were busy playing queen of the HOA, I froze every one of your accounts." Her mouth dropped. "You what?" I nodded. "Every dollar you stole from these people. Locked. You won't buy your way out of this one." The crowd erupted in murmurs, half in shock, half in satisfaction. Karen's hands trembled, and for the first time she looked small. But I wasn't done, because the real handcuffs hadn't clicked yet. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to regain control. "This is harassment. I'll sue every one of you." But the flashing red and blue lights rolling into the neighborhood cut her threat short. 2 deputies stepped out, real ones this time, not the fake rent-a-cop she once brought to intimidate me. The taller deputy scanned the crowd, then called out, "Karen Miller?" She froze. "You're under investigation for embezzlement, fraud, and arson." Gasps echoed. She laughed nervously, clutching her clipboard like a shield. No, you don't understand. I am the HOA president. You can't do this to me." The deputy took the clipboard from her hands and dropped it on the grass. "Ma'am, your title doesn't put you above the law." Neighbors whispered louder now. I knew something was off. "She's been pocketing our dues." That explains the missing repair funds. The walls of Karen's empire were crumbling in front of her own subjects. She turned one last time toward me, eyes burning with fury. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." I didn't blink. "No, Karen, you set the fire. But tonight you just burned yourself." The deputies grabbed her wrists and snapped the cuffs tight, dragging her toward the patrol car. For the first time, the neighborhood wasn't looking at me like the villain. All eyes were on her. As the patrol car door slammed shut, the tension that had gripped the neighborhood for months finally broke. People who once avoided eye contact with me now walked over, patting my shoulder, shaking my hand. "We're sorry," one man said quietly. "We believed her lies." I just nodded. "She was good at them," I replied, watching the car disappear down the street. But deep down I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about sending a message. No one, not even a self-proclaimed HOA queen, was above the law. The next week, county investigators tore through HOA records, uncovering a mess far bigger than I expected. Offshore transfers, fake invoices, even kickbacks from shady contractors. With the accounts frozen and the evidence stacked, the district attorney announced multiple felony charges. The HOA board, desperate to save themselves, dissolved the entire organization and begged the homeowners to rebuild from scratch. And guess who they asked to help lead the new one? I almost laughed when they asked. "I'm not interested in power," I said. "I just want my community to feel safe again." And that's exactly what started happening. New rules, fair votes, transparency. No more intimidation, no more threats. Still, every time I walked past the empty dock where my father's boat once floated, I felt a pang of anger. But then I'd remember the satisfaction of watching her accounts freeze and her empire collapse, and it made that loss sting a little less. Months later, word spread fast. Karen had taken a plea deal. She'd spend years behind bars and pay back every stolen dollar. The neighborhood was finally quiet. No screaming meetings, no fake violation slips taped to doors. But peace didn't come without scars. One evening, as I stood by the water where my boat once rested, a neighbor approached with a hesitant smile. "You know," he said softly, "what you did, freezing those accounts, it saved all of us. She would have bled this place dry." I looked out at the sunset reflecting on the lake and replied, "She thought burning my boat would sink me, but all it did was show me how far she was willing to go." I paused, then added, "She underestimated the one thing she couldn't torch, my resolve." That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up the final report the county sent me. Every stolen penny accounted for, every fraudulent signature traced back to her. I leaned back in my chair, a quiet smile crossing my face. Justice wasn't just served, it was ironclad. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without keeping one ear open for the sound of her heels stomping up my driveway. But deep down, I knew something bigger had shifted. She wasn't just exposed, she was a warning. To every HOA tyrant who thought they could bully their way into power, Karen's downfall was the story that would haunt them. On the day of Karen's sentencing, I drove into town not to celebrate but to see it with my own eyes. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even people from other districts who had heard the stories. Karen shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her once perfect hair tied back, her eyes darting like a trapped animal. When the judge read out the charges, embezzlement, fraud, arson, impersonating law enforcement, her shoulders sank lower with each word. The neighbors who once clapped for her HOA speeches now whispered in disgust. Some filmed, others shook their heads. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. "All I ever wanted was to live peacefully on my land." She tried to destroy that. But no one should ever fear losing their home, their safety, or their freedom to someone drunk on power. The judge sentenced her to 10 years. A murmur of relief swept the room. As deputies led her away, Karen turned to me one last time, eyes full of hatred, and hissed, "This isn't the end." I didn't even flinch. I just answered calm and clear, "For you, Karen, it is." Walking out of that courthouse, I felt the weight finally lift. My land was safe, my neighbors free, my family's honor intact. And as I drove past the empty dock, I thought of my father's boat. Gone but not forgotten. She had burned it to intimidate me. But in the end, she lit the fire that burned her entire empire down. Because in this country, we don't bow to bullies. We fight back. And we win.